So, okay, yeah, I'll admit it, I like RWBY. Yeah, I know, RWBY doesn't at all have the best reputation out there. Like, seriously, when was the last time you've heard anyone saying that RWBY was what they consider to be the best show of all time? So then why is it still so popular? The main reason? Because it's fun. And if I had to pick one character to represent that fun, it would be my favorite, Neo. I know, I'm not unique, okay? Having Neo as one of your favorite characters has kind of become tradition at this point. Cause how do you not love this murdering scoop of dessert? Well, there's a decent number of people out there who claim that this bean who can do no wrong is overrated. Right? I can't believe it either! The pure slander! The claims they make is that while she's great and all in the first 3 volumes of RWBY, where people generally agree that was the best era of the show in general, at the end of the day, she was an unimportant side character, that her relevance was almost non-existent. And when she eventually came back for volume 6, when she decided to take a more active role in the story, her writing became kinda lackluster. I have one thing to say to those people. The people that chose to attack this little ball of sunshine are kinda right. As much as people like to hype up Neo, for the majority of her appearances in RWBY, she was the very definition of a side character. She could not be more unimportant if she wanted to. And even when she started showing up more often in the later volumes, her actions were kind of getting confusing. Is it true? Is the love for Neo truly unwarranted? Are we just being fooled by her flashy design and her marketable name? Is she really overrated? I don't think so. I do believe that Neo deserves all the praise that she gets. There's a reason she's who I consider my favorite. The fact that this side character was put into a collaborative fighting game alongside the 4 title characters show how much people love her. Like legit, they didn't put the main villains. They didn't put the villain that started it all. Not the cool badass mentor figure. Not even the best friend that the writers love giving screen time to. No, they put Neo in the game. And man, don't even get me started on RWBY Chibi Neo. A show known for handling the characters better than the actual show does, handles Neo to perfection. Adorable isn't a good enough word to describe how great she was in the show. She was the lead vocalist in the villain's band for Battle of the Bands. For those who may not get the joke, she can't speak. She's mute. It's a hilarious bit. And additionally, the main vocalist for the entire RWBY franchise actually voices Neo's grunts and breaths in the Blaze Blue tag fighting game. So Neo being a singer has an extra layer of meta mixed into it. All of this says a lot about the love for this minor character. Sure, I could go on about how cute her design is and how much she makes my heart flutter every time she shows off the cleanest choreography I've ever seen. But it goes way beyond that. To me, Neo represents what brought me into RWBY in the first place. Pure, unhinged fun. I know, it's not the most impressive reason to love a character, but she just does it so well. I think we can all agree that what brought us to RWBY in the first place was not the story or the world building or anything like that. What attracted us to this world were the badass fights. Harp on the show's animation as much as you want, but when the music ramped up and the characters got into their fighting stances, you know shit was about to go crazy. Your attention was straight up held captive. I don't know about you, but watching those early RWBY fights made me feel like I was back in my childhood. Back when Dragon Ball Z was my favorite show of all time, back when I tried learning how to fight on the internet, and back when the greatest piece of action I've ever seen was Combat Gods. Actually, I take it back, because it's still the best. The point I'm trying to make is what drew me to RWBY in the first place was the fact that it just made me feel nostalgic. But that feeling started fading the more volumes went along. RWBY was losing its magic, all until a certain ice cream flavor showed up on my screen. See, back then when I first watched a show, I actually just couldn't get past volume 5. I would rewatch the first 3 volumes over and over again, but every time I got to volume 4, it would take me weeks to finish it. Like, despite the writing technically being better in that volume, I just couldn't take how slow the entire thing was. So imagine my struggles when I got to volume 5. I could barely get past episode 4, man. So for me, that's when I stopped watching RWBY. I genuinely couldn't bring myself to continue the story. And I guess back then, I decided that it was time to put the show in the past. But then, something showed up in my recommended section. Neo's return and what it means for RWBY. Just know that by this point, I haven't consumed any RWBY content in months. I genuinely decided to put the show behind me. So imagine my surprise when this video showed up out of nowhere. I didn't even know a RWBY Volume 6 was out by that point. But my intrigue took over and I clicked on the video. Yeah, technically, I got spoiled. Neo's return was a massive reveal to the entire community, and it just ended up showing up on my YouTube. But I gotta say, I'm not complaining. As I watched the video, I fell into a rabbit hole, reading comments, watching other videos, and in general, just seeing how happy everyone was to see this one character. But I didn't even really remember who this character was. Yeah, I know, this is really weird. I get it. Oh my god, sweat in my eyes! This is really weird, I get it. Nowadays, I'm one of the biggest Neo fans ever, but back then, I completely forgot who she was. So this was an interesting experience. I was seeing people get excited over the reveal of a character that I didn't remember in a show that I dropped, but I just kept watching these videos. Eventually, I stumbled into these videos. Theories on Neo. And again, I didn't remember who she was. The fact that people were making theories on this girl, I couldn't help but shake the feeling that I missed out on a character that everyone seemed to collectively love. So I decided to bite the bullet and start watching the show again. I started from the very beginning, the trailers, and by God, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. As I was watching the show again, I was reminded why I loved it in the first place. The charm behind the fun of the show was back in for me. And then I got to volume 2. Neo makes her first appearance in the show, and this time, I decided to pay extra close attention to her. Why was she so popular? What made her return such a big deal? But then, I got to the scene. Yang versus Neo, a fight that will forever go down in the legacy of the entire franchise. The show is filled with many amazing top-tier fights, but this fight just hit tremendously differently. Cause it was barely a fight, it was a massacre. Up until that point, Yang was shown to be one of the best fighters of the students, behind Pyrrha. Her confidence and fighting style made her my favorite character back when I first watched the show. But then, here comes this short and not at all intimidating figure just to mess that all up. The bodying that took place in this fight was outrageous. Every single RWBY character has some unique way of fighting, in which case Yang prefers to take things hand to hand. But Neo shows Yang just where she belongs in the hierarchy. Not a single hit was landed on Neo. The weaves, the dodges, just for her to hit Yang once in a while just to play around with her. Saying that she was playing with her food would be a damn understatement. She took every possible route to humiliate Yang and performed them with such grace. Oh my God. Mind you, the last time we saw Yang and Neo together was when we literally saw Yang go Super Saiyan and one-shot this big-ass mech. Then Neo just uses her powers to escape. But now, the one that should be running was Yang. There's a reason Neo wasn't scared of all that. She just knew she was that much better. It absolutely bewildered me how much I forgot about this scene, because it's one of the best fights in the show. Every time Neo showed up now, I'd just be reminded of the pure badassery that I witnessed here. With most shows though, no matter how badass a character is, they're eventually gonna get disrespected because the writers decide that they need a new big dog on top of the scale. But one of the best things here is it never happens to Neo. She was never the strongest character in the show. Like, she knew that she could never take down someone like Raven. But she is a character that none of the main cast is ever going to be able to beat. And the writers knew this. They decided to keep the respect on her name as the series went on. To this day, the main characters have never caused Neo to even struggle in a fight. It's actually ridiculous how amazing she still comes off all these years later. Eventually, I get to volume 3, and I just gotta say, Roman and Neo's team-up fight against RWBY is one of the most underrated fights in the entire show. The pure dog walking they gave RWBY was nothing but disrespectful. Obviously though, RWBY quote-unquote wins by tricking Neo at the last second, and Roman randomly gets eaten by a bird. Survive! But you can't take away how raw these two were in this scene. Then came along the slogfest. Again, I appreciate Volume 4's better writing, but Volume 5 had nothing going for it. I struggled so hard just watching all of it. But my main motivation was that Volume 6 existed. Everyone was saying that Volume 6 brings the show back to form. It's fun again, which is exactly what I wanted. When I finished Volume 5, I still couldn't help but feel like I was being baited. As much as I wanted to be happy that I was back in RWBY, the magic of the show just wasn't being captured starting Volume 4, and I didn't think I'd ever get that magic back. Then I started Volume 6, and holy shit, I was so happy. The intrigue was back in the show. The characters felt alive, the plot got richer, and the show even looked better. And with all this, I knew I had someone to look forward to. And eventually, it came. Volume 6, Chapter 5. The episode where Neo came back. I'll be honest though, I was terrified of this episode. Because Neo was such a hype figure back in the first 3 volumes of RWBY, I was worried that she wouldn't be able to live up to the crazy expectations I had. Maybe she just wouldn't be as fun to watch now. But boy was I wrong. Neo vs. Cinder was not at all what I expected, in the best way possible. Post Volume 3, all the fights in RWBY kinda lost their rhythm. They were fine, don't get me wrong, but they just got so generic. Nothing about them felt unique anymore. They lost the impact you would feel in those Monty fights. But with Neo's return came what popularized the show in the first place: good fight choreography. Neo's fight with Cinder was exactly what I needed the show to be able to deliver. Every movement, every action, the way the camera was placed, everything felt meticulous. This was the return of the art that this show offered. And most of all, we got to see the personality shine through. Neo's lack of an ability to talk makes it so that the animators have to put an extra effort into making Neo expressive. And I think this is what makes her such a fun watch. Every scene Neo's in feels more alive than any of the other scenes, just because, well, Neo feels alive. From her facial expressions to her body language, you can get an idea of what she's really thinking. Despite her lack of an ability to properly communicate, the audience felt closer to her more than most characters in the show. To me, Neo's return also marked a return of formula. The return to the RWBY I once wouldn't stop talking about. So I guess a quick TLDR to this portion of the story, I started watching RWBY again because of Neo. At the end of the day, there's just so much energy when she's on screen, man. We get to see a wide range of emotions when we get to see her. Dude, at this point, Rooster Teeth knew how much the community loved her. As of Volume 8 and Volume 9, they keep spoiling us with Neo content. The literal first character we got to see in Volume 8 was Neo. And again, they never disrespect how badass she is. Here's Neo dominating RWBY in a fight, and when Blake comes in to try and help RWBY, Neo just treats her as an afterthought. Oh, and this was after she one-shotted Yang while she was in her Super Saiyan form. A quick reminder that every single member of Team RWBY has trained a lot since their first time seeing Neo. They've improved so much that Yang went from getting one-shotted by Adam to blocking his shots and fisting him to oblivion. Pause. All that improvement doesn't mean shit to Neo though. Because again, she one-shots Yang while she's in her Super Saiyan form. And it wasn't even intentional. She literally accidentally beat Yang. How do you just let that happen, man? In every fight she's in, she always pops off. Sure, people get the occasional hit in on her, but it's usually because she gets distracted or she lets her guard down. But when it comes to the actual fight itself, she's constantly dominating. Okay, wait, no, we do not talk about this fight. It never happened. Holy shit, I remember the outrage from this fight. This old ass lady was actually able to keep up with Neo, the person who consistently styles on every person she sees. At the end of the day, you can kind of understand why though. Maria was a legendary huntress that even inspired Crow to be a huntsman. Her skills are stories of legend, and her power is literally having spider sense. That's beyond overpowered. Not to mention she's an old character in a profession where you die young. I think we can all expect her to be overpowered. Even so, Neo technically got the last hit in. Alright, buddies, RWBY Volume 9 just ended, and I'm honestly not sure how many of you guys have even caught up to the show at this point. But for those Neo fans out there, here is a spoiler warning. I'm serious, these are going to be massive spoilers. So, in this volume, they really decided to give us the Neo treatment. Because for the entire volume, the main villain was Neo herself. We're at a point where her being just a henchman can no longer be an argument, because she ain't one anymore. But even though she stepped out of the role, she's still an absolute goon. When she lands in the Ever After, Neo gets so pissed that she decides to become more overpowered. Her powers before were that she could transform the way things are perceived on the surface, aka she could make illusions. She would use this to make fake versions of herself so that the real her could hide, change the appearance of items for heist missions, make herself look like other people, and the most handy of all, she can give herself a makeover whenever she wants. That is the most practically useful power I have ever seen. But now, she just decides to go crazy, because Neo gets insanely overpowered. Now, she can clone herself multiple times over, and these clones don't just shatter on impact like they did before. Now they're fully capable of fighting on their own. She can completely construct buildings and structures on her own, and straight up create people from scratch. She brought back Ozpin, Ironwood, Penny, Pyrrha, and Torchwick. I think we all saw it coming though. Of course, with this power, she would bring back Torchwick. He was the one thing that made her feel happy. And I can't lie, seeing them interact with each other like this was adorable. It's crazy how powerful she is now. Because these people aren't just hollow flesh puppets for her to control. It's the fact that they have voices and a personality.
Salutations, RWBY! Hello again!
While they're not exactly accurate to the originals, it's still insane. But the scariest part of all this is that these clones have the same powers as the originals. Every single one of these dudes fight like they normally would before. In the Ever After, there's only one creature that everyone there fears, the Jabberwocker. Because in the Ever After, you don't really die. When your life ends, a magical tree just takes your soul and rebuilds it to create a new version of you. Basically, you get reincarnated. Technically, you lose all your memories and stuff, but in a way, it's still technically you. A different version of you, but it's still you. However, the Jabberwocker bypasses that rule. If someone from the Ever After gets eaten by the Jabberwocker, there is no new life. There is no reincarnation. So when Neo lands in the Ever After, the very first thing she runs into is the Jabberwocker. Is she scared? No. Does she even slightly worry? Not at all. You know what she does? She sees the Jabberwocker and f***ing kills it. Right there! No questions asked. She just bodies it right then and there. But later on, you see everyone fighting the Jabberwocker. Actually, multiple Jabberwockers. What's going on? Well, Neo created multiple versions of the Jabberwocker and sent them after the main characters. And remember, her clones have the same powers as the originals. She can give any of these guys permanent deaths if she wants to. So Neo genuinely is a god at this point. If she wanted to create an army of maidens, she probably could. Nothing could stop her at this point. So what does she do with these powers? She decides to do what she does best. Beat the absolute hell out of somebody. See, Neo's return came with a new story, a new source of motivation. What she wants now is revenge. Roman's dead and she wants someone to bleed for it. At first she went after Cinder, but after realizing that she can't kill a maiden, she goes after RWBY. And now with her new abilities, nothing can really stop her. So RWBY goes inside Neo's mansion, where Neo decides to flex how insane her abilities are. A recreated Roman comes out of a painting and taunts her. Then RWBY sees a table of people that died in the battles that she was involved in, people that she couldn't save. They all taunt her, laugh at her, and when Neo shows up, they stand by Neo's side, leaving RWBY completely alone and defenseless. But this just wasn't enough. Neo, being the little sadistic psycho that she is, decides that she wants to do more. All the people in the room, she makes them beat the out of RWBY. It's an absolute slaughter. There is no hope at all. Not only are they beating her physically, but they're also abusing her mentally. Remember, everyone there is dead. So Neo makes them all tell RWBY that she's the reason they're all gone. That she was an absolute waste of space and that she doesn't deserve to be a hero. That she doesn't deserve to live. Neo doesn't just want to kill RWBY, she wants the tree to rebuild her, reincarnate her. Because this, to her, is the best way to exact her revenge. Ruby Rose won't just die, she'll be straight up replaced. And she actually gets it done. She mentally broke RWBY so much to the point where she actually does it. She drinks the tea and ends her life. Neo successfully killed the main character. She's a downright monster. She also ended up stepping on the cute little mouse friend that RWBY and the others had. It should have been me! Eventually, plot happens. Neo mentally breaks because she realizes that revenge is no way for her to mourn Roman's death. She doesn't want to fight anymore, a cat goes down her throat, yada yada, unimportant stuff. At the end of the volume though, she's set free from the cat. Neo perma-kills the cat with her Jabberwocker army, and instead of attacking RWBY and her friends, she just stares at them, longingly, seeing the love and bond they have for each other and realizing that she kinda wasted a large portion of her life not seeking that. The only one important person to her was Roman, and as much as she'd like to pretend that he's still there, he's...
Yeah, I know. I'm not real.
So Neo decides that she needs a new start. She says goodbye to Team RWBY and goes down the ever after. She lets herself get consumed by the tree and her ending is left ambiguous to us. There are many ways getting reincarnated can work. Sometimes it's just a bit of soul searching where you come out exactly as yourself, but with a lesson learned. Other times you're completely rebuilt as almost someone entirely new. Still you, but a better you. In this method though, you lose all your memories and you'll never be the same as you once were.
Like a happy dream I can't remember.
So when it comes to Neo, we don't know what path she'll choose. She'll be given the choice to either start from literal scratch or to just spend some time figuring out what she wants to do with the rest of her life. In which case, I think this is the end of the Neo we're all used to. Whoever comes out of that tree will be a better and happier person than the one we've been following. As much as I love Neo and as much potential as I think she'd have for the story moving forward, I think this was a sweet ending to give a character like her. I am 100% certain that the writers gave us such a cliffhanger ending like this so that in a later season or whatever, they can bring Neo back. Whether or not it's the same version of her, we're definitely gonna see her again. And whenever she comes back, I'm expecting the RWBY fandom to react in a similar way as to how they reacted when she first came back. Since we waited from volume 3 to volume 6 before seeing her again, maybe now we gotta wait from volume 9 to volume 12. Is she the best character in existence? Far from it. Is she even the best character in the show? Objectively? Probably not. Was her writing really janky at a lot of points in the story? Absolutely. But the one thing she was able to do was entertain. And isn't that the point of shows in the first place? I'm not sure when we'll ever see her again. But whenever that happens, I'll be ready.
Neo?
Thanks for all the iconic moments. I doubt anyone in this community will ever forget you. So until next time, thank you for what I think was the greatest performance in all of RWBY.